Welcome back, everybody, to the No Starving Artist podcast. Another week, another episode. And what's exciting is for the first time ever, we're like current on episodes. So if you're watching this episode on Monday, it was filmed less than a week ago, which is fun. NSADance.com, that's where you can find out everything there is to know about No Starving Artists. You can see all of the shows that we're producing right now and get in tune with where all of those are available. And you can also check out merch. You can check out mentorship or online dance critiques or none of the above. You can just listen to this podcast and enjoy it as well. So I hope you guys are having a great day. We've got a great episode today, and it's also a nice little, not necessarily a continuation, but definitely a nice progression of a conversation that we started last week around cross-training and fitness and how that mixes with dance, and I'm really, really excited for today's episode. So let's jump right into it, you guys. Hide, welcome to the No Starving Artist podcast. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on this podcast. I'm really excited for our conversation.
Absolutely. Me as well. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name is Hide Horikoshi. First and foremost, I'm a proud dad and a husband. And I also happen to own a dance program as well as a fitness/strength and conditioning performance facility out in what I like to call middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. It's actually the actual town's name is Dansville, Pennsylvania. But we've been in operation coming up on 11 years now, working on both dance and the fitness side.
I love it. And we actually met at the Dance Life Teacher Conference. Mm-hmm. What was that, 2 years ago now? Coming up on 2 years, I guess.
Yeah. 2023, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to Regold in that event. That was a great event. And I think we met, but I don't know if it was Gio that introduced us or if we were already chatting and then Gio came into the picture, but you had known Gio and then I met Gio there as well. But it was a cool connection. And I remember learning a little bit about your story and a little bit about your program. So I was super excited when, you reached out and were like, I want to be on. And I was like, then be on. It's great. It's easy. So tell me a little bit about what was first for you. Was dance first? Was fitness first? And how did that sort of enter your life?
Sure. I think it's fair to say that just like most people, I went to college, right? And then I didn't know what I wanted to major in. I kind of stumbled across dance world. There was a college dance team. And I was like, you know what? I want to be part of this. And there was something in me that just kept saying like, hey, just keep trying. I was terrible when I first started. My genre is hip hop or street style. I didn't know my right foot from left foot. Just kind of kept going to classes and kept trying out. It was one of those dance clubs. It wasn't like a team that they went to. It was show based. But I would audition for a number and I would get cut. And that probably happened over and over and again. The first semester, I think I tried out for 6 and I got accepted into 1. But there's something about that process of being resilient that taught me a lot about I want to get better at this. So that's how I kind of got my foot in dance. And then I happened to reside in New York during when school's out. And so I was a train ride into New York City and I did a little research and found out Broadway Dance Center. So imagine somebody who didn't know their right foot from left foot going to take a class at Broadway Dance Center. It didn't go well.
Yeah, how did that go?
I just kept. I wasn't good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, whoa. Yeah. But there's something in me that made me hungry for more, to want to get better at it. So I kept going back and back and back, and that's kind of how I got started in the dance scene, with no background in terms of what I now know in terms of what the kids go through at a young age. And to me, it was so pure, right? Like I went to class because I wanted to get better. I didn't go to class because I wanted to audition or I wanted to get this gig. I was going to class because this was something I loved and I felt connection to as I was dancing. I felt more like myself as I was taking the classes and performing. And it was so pure and enjoyable that I just kept going back and wanting to perfect the art or learn more. And I think I try to hone in on that skill today. As far as fitness goes, it was, I played baseball growing up. That was my sport. And I'm Japanese. In Japan, the old school training philosophy is as pitchers, to build your endurance, you have to do a long distance run. So I used to run all the time, and that's how.
Okay.
Yeah. that's how it kind of translated into the weight room in the college years. So everything kind of stems from college.
Yeah.
Um, and then nothing that I was actually pursuing educationally, but doing things on the side as I
Yeah.
was trying to figure out who I was and what I was into.
Mm.
Um, that's also where I started, training with weights and kind of started digging in on my own in terms of learning, how to train properly, how to lift properly, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's something about that feeling. I feel like I remember that feeling as well when I first started dancing of being so terrible,
Hmm.
but like knowing that I could be good one day. And it was like, I feel like I've chased that feeling for a long time now. Cause you get to a point where you're just like, I don't know if it's a mix of like, you're not learning as much and then a combination of like, you also don't like, I don't feel like I care as much about being good. So maybe it's like a combination of those two things that like, I don't feel like I get that feeling as much anymore. But occasionally I find myself in a space where I'm like, oh, this is like, I'm struggling or like this is new to me or foreign to me. And then I'm like, I'm all over it. So I totally get that. And so intriguing too about like not to jump around too much, but um, I mean, I guess the question bears, does a long distance run, did it help your stamina?
Oh, I don't know. I think, probably did. I'm not really sure. I would say like foundation of training was built there.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the consistency, like that's like one of the things, like in terms of training and
Ooh.
dance, right? Like
Yeah.
consistency of going out there running 3 miles every single day. Like at the craziest of my
Yeah.
life, I was literally running 10 miles every day.
Holy
And without
cow.
yeah, and then it's not the healthiest thing. I would never promote that to anybody,
Yeah.
but that aspect of consistency still carries over to a point
Yeah.
like it's as an adult and as parents, it's really hard to set a time for yourself, but I try to set aside time for myself every day to make sure I do some kind of movement on top of teaching classes. And the way I
Yeah.
look at it is like, if my body is not healthy, I can't do the things that I'm passionate about, or I can't
Hmm.
work with the people that I truly love serving, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so if you just shift the focus a little bit, it makes sense as to why I need to do those things to make sure that I can deliver the best version of myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. The idea behind like, it's not necessarily the thing that you're doing, but the consistency of doing it every single day
Mm.
that kind of carries over into everything else. I don't know what it says about me, but I got a good mile in me. I got a good maybe mile and then that's it. I don't know why. There was a period, it was a few years back. I was like, all right, I'm gonna run every day. And I'm gonna like, cause you see the people on social media that are doing that like 5, 6, 7 miles a day. I'm like, let's do it. I
Uh-huh.
don't know why I get to that mile and I'm like, I can't go any further. I can't go any further. And everyone tells me like if I just keep going, it gets easier. But I don't believe them. I don't believe them at all.
Yeah, right. So I don't run anymore, right? That's
Yeah.
that's the plot twist, the guy
The
who used
plot
to run
twist
the
is it's
mountain.
gone now.
Yeah, and a part of it is like it takes a beating on your body, right? Especially
Yeah.
as dancers or as dance
Yeah.
teachers. There's enough damage that's already done to our bodies through change of direction in the movements. I just had this conversation with athletes that I was training this morning. I say, we break things down in here in the studio a lot in terms of your
Hmm.
movement patterns, how you move laterally, how you change direction, all that kind of stuff. It's because during the game or during a performance, or even when you're taking a class, you're not really thinking about, oh, is my body in alignment? You know what I mean? Like you're focused so much
Mm.
on the performing aspect of like, oh, I gotta look great doing this certain move, especially in the street style world when the movements are pretty fast.
Yeah.
You're not really worried about, alignment. Even as teachers, when you do certain movements, like a groove or bounce, where you're just going up and down and your knees caving inwards over and over again with a massive force, that's a
Mm.
lot of load on your knee. But like that's what our art calls us to do.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, okay, so that's happening. We can't really change that all of a sudden. So what do we need to do to kind of counterbalance that?
Yeah.
And so that's like the thing that's sometimes gets forgotten, I think,
Mm.
when dancers are training or something like that. Like the pieces, as soon as that two dots connect, there's definitely a little bit more buy-in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Tell me a little bit about what the relationship between fitness and dance is in the program that you have right now. How much are they doing? What are they doing? What's sort of that relationship like?
Sure. So I'm gonna kind of like jump ahead a little bit, then come back to this,
Yeah,
right?
that's fine.
So when I am working with kids, right, and I love working with kids, that's my passion, is being able to interact with them, work with them. And I always like to think ahead to the end goal in mind, right?
Hmm.
So when I'm working with kids, like what do I want them to get out of the time that we get spent together? And
Hmm.
I want, and I try to envision like, okay, like what is the ultimate goal? Like if somebody asks you, like, with all the kids that you work with, like what's the version of them that you envision you want everybody to be?
Hmm.
And to me, it's like I just want them to be a contributing member to the society who's empathetic, who's compassionate, who's doing great things in the world in their own way. That
Hmm.
way might be different, but that's who I want them to be. So then my mindset shifts in terms of what I try to communicate, what I try to teach them in the 45 minutes to an hour that I have with them in a classroom, right? So I'm not so focused on the fitness or the dance in terms of, like drilling something in, right? Like
Hmm.
those are just the vehicles that I choose to drive. You can choose to drive Toyota or Honda or Subaru, but
Hmm.
at the end of the day, you're trying to get to your destination, right? So
Yeah.
I look at dance and fitness as a tool as to which I have the opportunity to work with them. Within that tool, I want to make sure I deliver good content. So I have to be mindful of that in terms of how I deliver what I want them to learn. So, what does
Hmm.
that mean? What that means is if I said, all right, let me break down a movement to, let's say, third, fourth, and fifth grader and teach them how to squat, they will be bored out of their minds,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's not developmentally at the level that they're capable of handling.
Hmm.
But if I play a game with them where they have to squat, and within that game I give them certain cues, then they understand like, oh, this is how you do it. And
Hmm.
without them realizing that they're learning how to squat, all of a sudden now they go away with they go home with that piece of information. And
Yeah.
when they come across that thing again and somewhere else in a PE class or maybe a strength and conditioning down the road, they already have the foundations down.
Yeah.
Same thing with dance is like so much is focused on execution of performance or like I got to get better, I got to compete, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I think in terms of like, hey, dance to me was an outlet to be able to express myself. So I want you to enjoy this journey. I can give you a combo all day if you want me to, but you can also do that on TikTok, right? Like
Hmm.
I don't want to be the live version of the TikTok. I
Hmm.
want this time that we spend together to be meaningful. And dance just a tool. So if I can help you overcome your shyness or lack of confidence because you feel connected and safe in the space that we create,
Yeah.
then that's awesome because that's going to carry you forward in life more than the 4 8 counts I can give you in 45 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like you had someone or some ones that you came across in your dance journey that instilled that essence and energy in you? Or do you think it was something that you sort of like developed on your own over time through good and bad experiences? Because it's such a great outlook.
Mm, that's a great question. I think it's life circumstances. You
Mm.
know what I mean? Like and I always say it's like, different, everybody has challenges in their life.
Yeah.
But there are challenges in life that people face that are completely out of their control.
Yeah.
And when you face those circumstances, when the decision to live or die is completely out of your hands and
Yeah.
it's in somebody else's hands, or the decision whether you get to remain in a country or you go home is out of your hands and it's in
Mm.
somebody else's hands, right? Which I face both. You learn a certain type of patience and understanding and a great gratitude that always sticks with you. And
Mm.
that's the view that I have. The way I always phrase it is a privilege to work with kids. It is a privilege to have an influence on next generation that's going to lead this country or this world, right?
Yeah.
So if it's a privilege and that's the view that I have, then the way I treat them, the way I communicate with them, the way I handle conflict, or even when the things doesn't feel right, I am a little bit more careful in terms of how I communicate or how I talk to them. and how I work with them.
Yeah. And from your perspective, what is the effect of that been on the kids that are within your program? Like, how have you seen them sort of grow or develop as they kind of navigate throughout your program?
Sure. I love this. I love that question, because I was just looking over at my walls, and one of my favorite things about our studio and the environment that we've cultivated with my staff, and the kids too, and the families,
Yeah.
is the fact that like they want to come back, right? Home is a place you want to always come back to. And a lot of the kids, even when they go away to college, even when they go into the professional world, a lot of them still do come back. And one of my favorite conversations are always with the alums or the kids who've grown up, and then bring their kids back, and they share their life journey with us.
Yeah.
And some of them wants to come back and teach, and then watching them interact with the little ones who are now in the program, it just warms my heart. And in a way, that's what a community is, right? Like in a community, it takes a village to raise a child. That's the saying, right? And then we help them grow up in every process of the way, and they come back and they become that member. In a way, that's a life cycle that I think often gets missed nowadays in youth sports, youth dance, anything that's involved in dance, and then not just dance, but like in youth activities, because sometimes the short-term goal seems so big and so important that the long-range outlook on life in general gets in the background.
Yeah. I did not expect to, this was not in my, I mean, nothing's ever in my plan ever, but I want the culture that you've created at the studio seems to be kind of at the crux of what we're talking about here. My question is, what's your process like when you bring in new staff? Is there a training process that you go with them? How do you vet them in the first place? Because, as you just said, a lot of this, you can do a lot as the leader of the ship, so to speak, but ultimately, the other people that are underneath you are also heavily contributing to the culture that's within any business. How do you sort of navigate getting everybody on the same page so that you can collectively create that community?
Sure. We're lucky in a way. We're a small community, right? Like I said, it's the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So the word spreads fast. And the people, fortunately for us, the people who's contacted us kind of are aware of our culture and what we try to promote. Because, sometimes in a greater point from like a, 30,000 foot view, right?
Yeah.
When you're walking on your own path, when there is a million people going the other direction, you kind of stand out in a different way, right? So like one of the things that, we openly say is like, hey, we're not a competition studio. We're only recreation based. And it's not that we get pressured to like, or we get asked if we can do a competition. And it's not that I have like a negative feeling towards competition, but I am very protective of the kids, right? Like I put kids first. And in my mind, I'm like, you know what? Kids actually get enough competitions in other areas of life. In fact, if they're going to be involved in like different sports and compete that way, that's awesome. I can focus on providing the other element. And that's what we try to do. And so we have a lot of kids who are involved in different sports, different activities. And I think that's what childhood is about, right? I look back on my own childhood, and I didn't stick to one thing. I was playing baseball. I was going to go play pickup basketball. I was going to go play soccer. I was playing tag, like make believe, all that kind of stuff, which may seem a little things, but nowadays it's forgotten and it's lost. So I think in terms of like, how can we fill that bucket with what we do here? And that's why we settle on like, we're recreation based, and that's okay. There's definitely problems that comes with that view. But I'm totally content and content in a positive way with where we stand when I look at what's best for kids. And I can say, for us, at least, that is what's best for our kids.
I tend to agree more often than not. As much of my, job is taken up with the competitive side of things, I think based off of what I've, experienced, the conversations I've had, the experiences that people have gone through and shared with me, I think that in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a really big uptick of studios like yours that are recreation based, that are non-competitive. And I think for a lot of the reasons that we're talking about is I think that people are going to inevitably realize that specializing at 9 years old is not always the best option. And that we were kind of talking about that on the last episode as well, is like, yeah, I mean, my dad put me in every sport possible, partially because I think he really wanted me to be good at sports and I just wasn't, but I tried them all. I didn't like any of them, but I tried them all. And, even later on in life, when I was in junior high and high school, like, I tried some other things aside from dance. And I think there is a lot of value in that. And I think all of those experiences ultimately end up feeding into whatever you do end up specializing in or focusing in on later in life. Whereas if your only sort of focus is one specific thing, then, I think you can run into issues. Maybe not for all kids, but I think for a lot of them. So I think that makes perfect sense. Yeah. And I love too, I think, I was almost hoping, I think subconsciously, that was going to be your answer to that question, because I agree. I think it's the same with me. Like I've talked about this before, that I feel a little bit more comfortable going into spaces when I get asked to come teach places, because I know that they've probably seen what I do and what my content and what I stand for. And so I can most of the time safely assume that we align on a lot of things. And I think it's similar to what you're describing, that when people, if someone comes and wants to teach at your studio, they're probably coming for a reason, because your culture is so clear and it's so stated.
Yeah,
which is
1,000%.
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have, kids who are respectful and enjoy being there. Even within our walls, like I said, there are challenges, right? Like different age
Yeah.
groups brings different challenges. I just had this conversation with my middle school kids. It's like, I can't tell the difference between your mark and full out. And that's a lot of times though, like now this is pulling from the fitness side and strength
Yes.
and conditioning side. A lot of kids don't know what it feels like to give 100%. So
Ooh.
yeah, and even when I think of like, so let's talk about conditioning. I know the
Yes.
conditioning was an area that you and Matt talked about in the last episode.
Yep.
When I put them on what's known as an assault bike is the one that has arms and the legs. And I
Okay.
say, I want you to challenge yourself and get your heart rate to as close to your max heart rate as possible, which is really, really hard to do without getting kids on the bike. Like on the bike, it's really easy to achieve, but like even when they sprint, it's hard to achieve the highest heart rate because they don't know their max potential or they don't know how to get there almost. So as teachers, we almost have to physically show them, especially when they're young, what it means.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting if you watch and if you've taught like all different levels, youngest kids, all they know is how to dance full out, right? Like
Yeah.
they have one speed, either sprint or sleep, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
kid child development. Somewhere along, like I'd say maybe fourth grade to middle school, especially, it peaks at middle school. They lose that ability and they start to hold themselves back, and that becomes the new norm. So if we don't change the narrative or start to talk about it in those years, when they reach high school, they go into high level performances or like at the recital, the oldest group, without knowing what it means to perform full out or give 100%.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's you can see it right as teachers at conventions and teachers, in the
Yeah.
studio setting. It's easy to tell, but they don't understand. It's like, but I gave you 100%.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then that's when it clicked to me. I was like, these kids might not know what 100% is. Even if you physically show it, it's hard for them.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I started doing several years ago is come the recital time, I will make them do a whole piece full out. And then as a surprise, and they caught up on this, so they kind of started figuring it out. But I make them do full out performance 2 times in a row without any break. At the end, I give this talk about like, do you see how fast your heart's beating? Like that's the level I want you to get to
Yeah.
when you perform this number.
Yeah.
Not how you felt after the first one, but how you felt after the second one.
Yeah.
Because that's how much you can give. right? So like
Mm.
making them realize of their ability to perform 100% is also an element where it can stem from the strength and conditioning side.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And I often wonder, one thing I talk about a lot with kids and parents is that 11, 12, 13 age range where the kids themselves are physically changing a lot, they're mentally changing a lot, they're switching schools, a lot of things are shifting. And what I talk about a lot is like, if you're a dancer that started really young, I think where dance falls short sometimes is the scaling and progression of dance, wherein a lot of dancers end up their training looks very, very similar from when they start to when they finish. There isn't a lot of adjustment for the things that we're kind of talking about. And I think on the strength and conditioning side, and even with some other youth sports, that's not always the case. I remember being delving into fitness and working out and even some other sports, and like there are things that are like, nope, you can't do this yet. We're not doing this yet. This comes a little bit later once you've mastered this. And I think dance has elements of that, but I think that it's something I've noticed as an issue is their training does have to change once they get into that middle school age range. The way that they approach their dancing can't be the same way it was when they were 9, because they're not the same as when they were 9. And I think that sometimes is where the strength and conditioning is so complementary to dance, because like you're saying, it teaches them some really, really valuable things about their body awareness, about their conditioning, about all of the above, which I think is really interesting.
Mm-hmm. So I would add on to that because I experiment with both in both fields, right?
Yeah.
It's it's not necessarily that like there's definitely upper level skills that you want to teach as the dancers progresses,
Yeah.
but our communication in terms of coaches or instructors in terms of what we're trying to teach has to change as well. So like when they're
Mm.
younger, you have to mask it, right? Like I want them to focus on having so much fun
Yeah.
that they don't know what they're doing, but you're getting them to do what you want them to do.
Yeah.
Whereas as they progress, you can be a little bit more direct about this is what I want you to execute. That communication doesn't translate really well to the young age. Vice versa, if you kind of not necessarily dumb it down, I don't like that word, but use metaphors, use things like like if I wanted them to reach as high as they can, I might say like I want you to reach for the tomato jar in the highest
Mm.
highest level. Then the
Mm.
little kids would try to reach that, right? Like, okay,
Yeah.
great, that's a great line, right? Whereas like if I try to use that language to a higher level dancer, they'll just kind of look at you funny. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So like it's the communication, it's the environment that you create, I think, that really
Mm.
changes. And I'm sure you're the same way, but when I teach the younger classes, my personality and who I am is a lot more outgoing and
Yeah.
extroverted.
Yeah.
Whereas when you teach a higher level, you're a little bit more like, I'm still smiling, but I may not say as much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'd let them figure it out.
Yeah.
That's another element too is, when you think about like why parents enroll kids in dance, right? Recreation,
Hmm.
competition, whatever. It's because at home they like to dance. What does that mean? That means there's a music playing and kids are dancing around.
Mm.
When you put that kid in a studio setting dance class, not a lot of that is happening, right? It's our teacher's moves that's being copied by the kids, which is not what they signed up for.
Yeah.
So if we don't recreate that environment that they learn to love dancing within our walls of the studio, their interest in dance alone dropped tremendously because like, well,
Wow.
this is not dance to me, right? So I've
Yeah.
been more careful in recent years in making sure that that element gets incorporated because truly that's at the core of dance.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even want to add anything to that. The way you worded it is, I think that's such a profound, like simple but profound idea that I do think a lot of studios don't, and I don't think it's intentional. I think, like you said, I think it's just people not realizing. I think it's people, doing how they did it, how their teachers taught them, and so they're just kind of continuing that cycle and not realizing that, yeah, we're stripping away that super, super vital element, which is, yeah. Yeah, because you're right. Yeah, we put these little kids in class, and it's they're not doing what they wanted to do when they came into that class.
Right. I mean, like the little kids. So what's the first thing that they want to do when they get to the studio? Run around. You put the
Yeah,
music. They're dancing. They're running around. It's like
yeah,
that's what they came here to do. And then what do the teachers most of the time do? All right, go find a spot to stand on. It's the
yeah,
complete opposite of what they came here to do and what they want to do and what we're asking them to do. So
yeah,
I'm not saying you have to lean one way or the other, but we have to find the happy middle ground.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I agree. I agree. I want to ask what are some things that you're seeing? Because I think all of us engage with dance on such a large scale now, even outside of just our own programs and our own kids that we work with.
Mhm.
What are some things that you're seeing from a physicality and fitness standpoint inside of the dance world that are concerning to you, or that could be improved upon as we move forward?
Mm. Um, so one, that ability to not know how to turn it on unless they're on stage,
Mm,
right? And then as
yeah,
teachers, I think, if I'm talking to the teachers, like that's almost too late. Because if we don't get to see the full out version of your performance prior to going on stage, how can I give, correct notes
yeah,
to make sure
yeah.
that they improve before they take the stage? Two is I think we have to keep in mind that like they are overstimulated, right? Whether
Mm,
that's through other activities or sports or just through a small device called phone. They're super overstimulated. So and they're coming from school where they're sitting most of the time. So
yeah.
there needs to be an element of fun that's thrown into the class that gets their mind off of that, like what they came from, and gets them excited to be in the dance club. That transition, and that's
Mm,
honestly one area that I'm still like trying to figure out the balance of, like how can I make something fun in class that translates to what I want them to learn in the dance studio environment.
yeah, yeah.
That's the tough part because I think when I think of kids, like I go back to this idea, we're a dance studio, but we're working with kids. So I want
Yeah.
to make sure that every minute that they spend here is a time that they're enjoying or they're getting something out of.
Yeah.
And as much as I'd like to stick to the routine warm up breakdown from like, let's get their heart rate up to do some stretching to
Yeah.
isolations to grooves to all that kind of stuff. Sometimes I have to like be able to adjust on the fly by reading the room to say, all right, they need a little bit of this today. They need a little bit
Mm,
of that today. And a lot of times, that little bit of this and a little bit of that is giving them the opportunity to explore movements.
yeah.
And if you say like and when in a street style when we do cipher, right? Like if
Hmm.
you've ever done cipher with like middle school or high school kids and you just put them in a circle and ask one person to jump in, usually they freeze, right? Like
Yeah.
they're not that's not something that they enjoy doing. So I thought to
Mm,
myself, okay, how can I create an environment where something like that is happening, but they're like all engaged and having fun? So then you break it up into group of pairs. And you ask one
mm,
of them to hold a pose, which teaches them like when you have to hold a pose on stage, you have to own that pose, not just like cross your arms and smile, but
yeah.
like be intentional in terms of what pose you're delivering.
Yeah.
And then the second person freestyles for 2 8 counts around your partner. So it becomes interactive, but it's
Mm,
also without them realizing they're freestyling. Then they switch. So they have to think of how they're going to switch from moving to freezing and then
yeah.
freezing to moving. And then you just let that go on for a little bit. And then you just kind of let them explore the movements. All of a sudden they're smiling, they're having fun, and all the drained faces turns into big smiles, and now they're ready to learn.
Yeah.
But if I
Yeah.
didn't take the pause to do that and push through with my agenda, I'm not really sure that if that class would have been a productive class.
Mm. How much of your thought process when you're in the studio, thinking about the studio, how much of your brain power is spent on figuring out if there's another way or a different way, or as you said, kind of reading the room? What would your kind of guess be?
A lot, I think.
Yeah.
Uh, it's like this. It's like when you, I'm trying to give a metaphor in terms of how I want to deliver this message. But when I put when I'm putting the kids as the center of my universe, or like the kids that I get to work with or have the privilege to work with as the thing that I love the most, that's easy to do in terms of trying to figure out what's best for them.
Mm.
Because, honestly, and then it was an eye-opening moment, and then in a turn time, in a way that, like, close to recital time one year, I said to them, I was like, you know what? This is your piece. Like, how do you want it to look? It really doesn't matter what formation I put you in based off of what I think is going to look best. I can give you my input, but like, I'd rather you feel comfortable and confident on stage because this little piece of the formation is not going to change the entire plan. I want
Mm.
you to have a say in it. And they performed it so much better. There was a book that I got this idea from where it talked about a college university professor on a first day. Usually when you go to college class, you get the syllabus, right? And
Yeah.
then it kind
Yeah.
of outlines everything that you need to know with the timeline. I forget what book this is from. I wish I can refer it back so I can recommend it to people. But the professor handed a blank sheet of paper and said, all right, as a class, your goal is to come up with a syllabus. Syllabus is what bonds us in terms of the expectation of the class and me.
Yeah.
And they came up with it. And what ended up happening was so beautiful. And I'm not really sure if this would work in today's day and age. But I kind of do a spin-off version of that with a group of our dancers called peer leaders, which we can talk about later. Um, but it's a contract. So when the contract is written by both parties and they have an input on it, they're more likely to
Mm.
follow. That's creating buy-in instead of me saying these are the rules that I want you to follow. It's a rules that's combined and created by both parties.
Yeah.
And sure, we're working with kids, right? But they're a lot smarter than we think. And
Mm.
I honestly think they're a lot smarter than when I was their age because
100%.
they have so much information within their hands that it is really, really interesting to read some of the things that they're able to express and some
Mm.
of the standards that they want to hold themselves up to.
Mm.
Hmm.
I want to talk about peer leaders right now because now I'm interested.
So, Peer Leadership Program is our leadership development class, right? So, in
Mm.
a studio setting, it's typical for, the younger classes to have assistants where like the older dancers
Yep.
come and help out, right? But I wanted to kind of formalize that process. And I thought to myself, it's like, well, if we're going to do this, I want to formalize it and also have it as a leadership development opportunity. Because in today's school, like talking to the kids, they come home with a lot of these papers of like, oh, you need these, like, I need you to sign off on these volunteer hours or these leadership opportunity hours.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of kids struggle with that because they don't, even when they're involved in a team, they don't have those opportunities to like actually work on leadership skills, to be involved in a different way, to kind of develop those type of qualities that's actually
Hmm.
required in life, right? Like, so looking at the bigger picture, leadership skills and qualities, I think is one of the most important things when it comes to kids. Like, I want kids who are not afraid to voice their thoughts and not afraid to work with group and say, hey, I'm going to take the leadership role here, or understand in a group setting what role they feel like they fit best
Yeah.
instead of just sitting back and waiting for somebody to tell them what to do.
Mm.
So the leadership program, they have an application that they have to fill out. We take in from seventh and eighth graders on. So they have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 6 years of leadership experience that they can develop within our program. And the
Yeah.
last 2 years, juniors and seniors can apply to be an assistant. So
Mm.
assistants works closely with a assigned instructor, peer leaders, and assigned to a class. So I may have an
Got it.
assistant and two peer leaders in my class, but the expectations differ. Like a seventh grade peer leader, if all they do is just stand in front of the class and observe what's going on and figure out their role, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because that's how it works in the job field, right? Initially, the
Yeah.
first week, you're not going to go in guns blazing like I'm going to do this and this and this without
Right.
knowing what the company is about. You have to know how this operates before you figure out how you fit into the existing pieces.
Yeah.
So as they figure that out, they eventually start to step up, or you coach them through it. Hey, I
Mm.
noticed, you're in ninth grade now, and you haven't done much other than just standing in front of the class, or when I tell you or ask you to do something. These are things I think you'll be really good at. So try to
Mm.
make connections. I want you to try to memorize the 20 kids that's in this class's name, by the end of September. Dance season starts in September, so you have a month to try to remember everybody's name, because that's a skill, right?
Yeah.
And by the year the assistants year comes around, juniors and seniors, they're helping the instructors choreograph a piece because they work so closely with them, and they build a unique bond. And some of the assistants that's graduated have a closer relationship with the instructors that they worked with than me. And that's the beauty of it. I want that. You know what I mean? Like, relationships are so important in life that if they're able to build that kind of relationship here in a healthy way, they're going to seek out similar things in the future.
Yeah.
I think this life in general is just about like passing it on. You know what I mean? Like, I'm here for a certain period of time. But there is going to be a time where I'm going to be gone. And I want to know that while I was here, I did my best to spread as much knowledge, as much good energy and knowledge that I was blessed with, and then share with the younger generation.
Yeah.
I want you to think about like at your funeral, who do you want there? What do you want people to say about you? And that's the standpoint that I'm coming from, partially because I got to kind of experience that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The year before, when I was hospitalized, like I saw it, and the picture that I saw was what I hoped it would be, but then that also fueled me to do more in terms of your not necessarily. I don't like the word influence, but like, are you genuinely sharing and then teaching and caring for the next generation the best you could with them in mind, not me in mind, but them in mind.
That program is there's so many components of that program that I think you've done so masterfully. I've seen assistant opportunities inside of studios. I think where a lot of us fall short with things is like the initial implementation is there, but then the follow-up and the follow-through is not quite there. And so I love a lot of the little bits that you talked about in terms of like, even just giving feedback. I find that a lot of, people will put someone into a position, they won't be happy with the way that they did that. And instead of giving them feedback and educating them on how to be better, they just sort of avoid it or let it be or take them out of that position. And I think, that, is what stood out to me about what you just explained, is like not only the idea and the implementation, but how you followed through and progressed them through that as well. And maybe this is your answer to this question, but for a studio that's listening to this, or a teacher, or just, anybody that's like, okay, this is great, but my studio's competitive and I have, we have to clean routines and we have to get things done and we have to prepare for competition. What would you say are some things or some thoughts that they could still implement that would make a big difference in their program that you've learned from your program?
Honestly, this is I would say, like, I want to be fair in terms of, like, I don't know the culture of the competition studios, right? Like, I know that they exist, and I've heard in bits and pieces, but I've never been in it. So, like, it's all based on assumptions. So I want to be fair in stating that so that I don't come across judgmental, or, you know what I mean? Like, I want to make sure that I'm being fair in that regards. But I think a lot of times when there is a struggle point, when we take a step back and look at it, the path that we keep going is usually not the right path. So what if we just did something completely different that energized the group, that like took the stress away from the idea of the competition or a thought of competition, to boost the team morale and to get the group together? Because at the end of the day, like, I'm imagining that the competition teams are spending hours and hours and hours together, based off and focused on this one thing.
Yep.
So pull them out of that environment, have them bond over something completely away from dance, and see if that camaraderie and that opportunity to bond helps them to perform together on stage.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I want to dance at your studio. I love so much of what you're saying, and I think partially because it resonates and overlaps with a lot of the things that I lead with in teaching, but I think the through line even if it's different from person to person, is like you've been saying, having something that's guiding you that's bigger than just the thing is so important. Even like when I judge, like I tend like my bigger picture is like transparency and also empathy with that kid. And so, I feel safe speaking freely because I know I'm leading with that at the core. And I think, that's really sort of like comes through with what you're saying, is that your intention and your motivation is so clear that then the other choices sort of just fall into place because you're leading from that core place so strongly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it goes back to, and then I think back to like a lot of the athletes who's been successful in the collegiate world as well. When you have that thing, and it's really important that somebody, and then this is a part that often the coaches miss, somebody builds that relationship with that individual to earn the right to say, hey, why do you love what you do? So you say,
Yeah.
you love dance. Why do you love dance? Just because. Well, that's not good enough. I need you to dig a little deeper. What does dance mean to you? Like, truly, what does dance mean to you? Is there a deeper meaning than I just love to dance? Because
Yeah.
if I really want to help you get to the next level, if I want to coach you, if I want you to achieve all the dreams and goals that you have, I need to know what that deep meaning is. And if you don't know, then I can't help you, guide you there, right? So, like, I think of an athlete, so a baseball player who's in the Phillies organization right now. He works incredibly hard, but I think it's because his love for baseball is tied with an escape of a time that was really difficult to him. He went through a challenge when he got the college scholarship offer, which is a really exciting time for any athletes or dancers, right? Like to be able to dance at the next level or to be able to play the sport at the next level.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not all cracked out to be,
Mm.
right? And then so the first school that he went to, he really struggled through that process. In the meantime, his dad also suffered a stroke, so he had to come home and take care of that.
Mm.
And then he had to figure out how to balance his passion and taking care of his family and all on, along the way. And I think when it comes down to it, he connects it to that moment to say, you know what, like baseball got me out of the darkest time of my life. I was able to keep remaining focused on this thing, to continue on this path, even in the darkest moment. And that's why, and when I know that I can dig through and dig deep and I was able to get out of that kind of situation, then I know that it's something that's really, really meaningful. So it's almost like it's not that I want to wish bad luck or anything bad on anybody, right? But like when these life circumstances happen, that's out of your control, and you are made to realize what something means to you. It really helps you appreciate what you get to do. And it's not that that appreciation cannot be attained without going through a difficult time. Um, but at the same time, I think that's the process of a good coaching that needs to take place is like really dig deep into why this kid loves to dance. Like, what is it
Yeah.
about that draws you to the class all the time, or that draws you to want to perform when the music is on? Like, what is it? Can you vocalize it? Can I help you vocalize what that is?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the part,
Yeah.
like I said, the coaches a lot of times miss is like, you got to earn that right to have that coaching moment. And that comes from like kid centric approach, right? Like if I'm thinking about the kids, like I need to earn that trust. I need to earn that relationship. I need to be, you know what I mean? And not for me, but for them. Like if I truly want to help them, that's what I need to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I think there is unfortunately a lot of coaches that lead from a space of not they don't, whether it's they don't care or they're not mindful of earning that coaching moment. They try to almost just force the coaching moment, and I see that a lot. I see that a lot where and both parties end up struggling, right? Because the coach ends up struggling because they're not getting through, and they're like, the kid doesn't care, and they don't like this. And then the kid is struggling because from their perspective, they're like, I really care. I just don't like the way I don't like the way the energy you're giving to me. And none of them ever, there's rarely any communication between the two. So then it's like, one person's over here, one person's over here saying completely different things. And so I love that idea of like, you have to earn those moments. They're not just there for you to sort of put on top of the students you're teaching. You have to really, there is work that we have to do as instructors to bridge that gap.
Yeah. I'll share with this with you, and then I think this is a really important thing. I've always preached to my staff, at least. I said, hey, I love that you love dance, but I need you to love kids more. I need you to love working with kids more. The love you have for the kids needs to be more than how much you love dance. The love you have for the kids needs to be more than the sport that you're coaching, which is really hard. The two can exist, but the love for the kids needs to be higher. Why that's important is because there's going to come a critical moment, which I've faced many times, where the best thing for the kids is to say no. The best thing to do for the kids is to turn down the offer that seems lucrative.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's the strong ground that you must always stand on, I truly believe, when working with kids, to try to do what's best for them.
Yeah. Yeah. There it is. I was going to ask you for a last little thought, but I think that's the last little thought. That's such an what I would say an easily digestible thing for someone to hear and be like, okay, got it. That, I can do that bare minimum. And I think, yeah, that's, wow. I mean, the way I really hope that people, whether you're listening or watch this, feel what I feel, which is just like this unfaltered love of educating and, passing on what dance has given to you. Like, that's what I feel when I hear you articulate the things that you say, is like, it's so clear. And I hope that people understand that. And I hope that, I think, to your point, not everybody has the same experiences, and not everybody has, something that may have, created motivation for them to do better. But I really do believe that if you listening to someone else's story can sometimes be that for you. Even if it wasn't something that you experienced directly, listening to how it affected somebody else can affect you. And I think that hopefully that resonates, because, what you're saying is incredible.
And I'll be open to say, like, I'm here because of all the mistakes that I've made, right? Like, all the wrong things that I've done. And I continue to make mistakes, like there may be something that I said in this episode, when I listen back, I may be like, I don't know if that's in line with what I truly believe, or I don't know if that's what's best for the kids. And so that our desire to want to strive for perfection, or, like, not say the wrong thing, sometimes gets in our way. But I always tell my kids, like, it's okay to make a mistake as long as you learn from it, right? Like, if you are willing to be vulnerable and open and honest, and you're putting others' thought process and others first in terms of how you're speaking and what you're doing, and being careful with that. Along the way, you may make mistakes, but those mistakes are okay as long as you learn from it. And then when you face the same situation next time, you handle it a little differently.
Yeah. I love that. I love that sentiment. What, tell people where they can find you, where they can find your program.
Sure.
Do you offer, I don't know if this is something you do, but, when it comes to the fitness side of things, do you offer any online stuff, anything like that?
Sure. The easiest way to find me is probably Instagram. It's RMS Danville, or Komotion Nation. Komotion is spelled with K instead of C. So RMS Danville, Komotion Nation on Instagram. Currently, I don't offer any online program. That's something I'm looking into. It's one of my goals this year is to really just, like, I want to get out of my comfort zone. My comfort zone is the studio and this local community. But I do believe there is greater calling for me, in attempt to try to reach more kids, all over the globe. One of that is, like, reaching out to you when I saw your post, and I was like, hey, let's give this a shot. You know what I mean? Like, this is not a comfort zone by any means. I've been like shaking the entire time because I'm a little nervous, you know.
You'd never guess it. You would never guess it.
But yeah, so those are the places people can find me for sure.
Amazing. Hide, thank you so much for your time today, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it.